This is Our View, brought to you by the proud members of the Washington Federation of State Employees, the people who work for you. Too many times, state employees have been unjustly treated because their scientific or technical report did not support the agency's intentions. Employees can be pressured into reaching different conclusions. A law is now in the works that might not change agency policy, but it will protect the employee.
We're in a position of making public policy rulings or decisions on public policy, rules, environmental rules, that may not always be popular with the people who are being regulated, and in some cases that produces a great deal of pressure on the upper management to make compromises. And sometimes the manifestation of that compromise is a request that you change your ruling or your writing on a rule or your judgment on a rule in writing and sign your name to that. And that's a problem for many professionals when your professional opinion disagrees with the political solution to a problem. The solution we're looking for is some protection for the employees, professional opinions being expressed, and having that be preserved. In other words, if I choose to make a scientific judgment on a particular issue and write that judgment out as part of my required duties, I expect that even if the agency does not, by way of policy, agree with that decision, they will not force me to change my ruling or my decision. Part of it is that we're trying to preserve the professional integrity of scientific decisions and science-based decisions. We're looking at science-based rulings, not policy or political-based rulings. So it's important for us to preserve science as the deciding factor in a lot of policy decisions. The other thing is that we also want to have the ability to be protected in our jobs when we see wrongdoing at any level of administration in our agency and report that wrongdoing. We want to be safe from recrimination and retaliation.
Our governor recently visited the construction site of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge to mark an important step in its completion. She also congratulated the workers for a safe job well done.
I've come today to celebrate the momentous occasion of last week, but also to say what an amazing feat this is about to be. And it's not being just built, it's being built the Washington way, absolutely top-notch, and that's a credit to you. Thank you and congratulations on what you've done thus far. And the other thing I wanted to say is we've had, about 2.5 million hours of work with no more than 3 lost time incidents, no major safety incident. That is a model for Doug and for the Department of Transportation and every contractor in this state and around the United States on how to do business. And so I want to thank you for what you've done thus far with respect to safety, and to all those involved in the safety effort, congratulations for making that real for our workers, to make that possible for them and for their families. Now on a more personal note, as governor you get a chance to reflect once in a while that, well, anything I do in any given day make a difference for my kids and make a difference for my grandchildren. And as we were driving here this morning, I stopped to think about you and what this means. So that any time in the future, you can take your kids over the bridge, or you can stand on one side and look at it, or you can take your grandkids and you can say, look what we built. That's a feat that anybody who participated in would be proud of. But I was a part of that. I made that happen. So I hope that's not lost on you, what a tremendous feat you are about to accomplish this summer. When we can celebrate this summer, the opening, I'll be here. I hope you'll be here with your families and think about the future and what it means to the future of the people of this area. You are spurring their economy, you are making them safe, and you're showing the rest of the country how to do business. So congratulations on a job well done.
A tragic accident involving a construction crane in Bellevue has the state considering new safety legislation. Some businesses already are saying the proposed safety standards go too far. In Europe, crane safety is an issue that is being worked out across many borders.
We see them now on every construction site. They're big, tall, and for many very impressive. In Europe, they even have competitions with them. We are talking, of course, about cranes. There are two types of cranes, mobile cranes and static cranes. These mobile ones are mounted on trucks specially adapted for this use, but static cranes are bolted to the ground or a building and are stabilized with cement blocks. The fixations are always adapted to its height and weight. The safety rules are different between states, but in Europe, safety standards are almost the same in every European country. For example, in France, all construction sites must be declared to a government office. It must say how long the construction will last, how many employees, what work will be done, and of course, what vehicles will be used. You need to get permission from this office to use a static crane in France. You must say how high it will be, what its weight will be, and all other details. But the big difference with French standards is that the company that owns the crane or rents it is not allowed to install it. A second company specialized in crane installation will install the crane, check out its functions and safety standards. Then, after installation, a government organization has to give its safety approval before the construction starts. They inspect the crane, its details, the fixations on it, and even test it. The surroundings are also important around the site. Certain cranes are forbidden if there is a public building or area too close to the site, like a school or a park. They also check out the crane operators. Most crane operators in France now have a training and degree certifying them as machinery operators, but this is not mandatory. However, it is an obligation for all crane operators to go through a special safety course that teaches them all safety standards they must know, and before starting on a new construction site, must go through medical inspection. The operators check out their cranes before starting every day. They also have to be very careful about weather conditions. If there is too much wind, a special device warns them, and they must stop the crane. In France, over the last 5 years, there's been 10 fatal crane accidents. These accidents were due to weather conditions, technical problems, some abuse of overtime work, but sometimes a bad study of the ground, therefore destabilizing the crane. Even with national safety standards, Brussels will still impose more regulation on cranes, that many professionals in this sector think it will only create more paperwork and complications than safety itself. Benjamin Marcus for Our View, Paris, France.
An international organization, the OECD, works with governments to, among other things, set standards of workplace health and safety. From their headquarters in Paris, the trade union side of this organization thinks their efforts would be enhanced if the U.S. government demanded that U.S. corporations uphold standards when operating in other countries.
Well, I really think it could make a huge difference. First of all, because the US is a leading country, it's the most important economy in the world. And if the US would say, if the government would say to its companies, well, you have to respect the guidelines in your operations worldwide, I think that would not only influence the US companies, but it would influence other governments and other companies. Because the OECD is supposed to work, as I said, on peer pressure, but if you have one of the most influential economies, one of the most influential governments, which is not doing what it's supposed to do, then it's much easier for governments like Mexico, Korea to get away with it. If the US can get away with it, why couldn't they? But if the US would stand up for the guidelines, then there would also be more pressure on other countries which are not doing very well, like Mexico and Korea. So I think it would really make a difference, and also because we know that there are problems with many US companies in the developing world. So if the guidelines were to be taken seriously by many of these companies, we could actually achieve something. We would protect workers' rights. Workers would be able to organize to set up their own trade unions if the guidelines were respected. So no, that would really change things if that was possible.
A look at our union history. Here's Ross Reeder.
If you ever visit the Everett, Washington Labor Temple, look for the old banner of the International Union of Timber Workers. which represents the Union of Shingle Weavers, whose strike precipitated the Everett Massacre of 1916. Here's a little bit of history of that union before its Everett fame. While still in the initial stages of formation, the International Union of Timber Workers called a strike in Grays Harbor, Washington in 1911. The union was actively organizing in that area when on October 10, 1911, 2 mills just discharged every union employee. The union called a strike that later merged with the IWW strike in Raymond, Washington on March 14, 1912, which is why you're hearing about this in the month of March 2007. When the employers settled with the IWW, most of the IUT's demands were met. This early victory, gained with the assistance of the IWW, soon came back to trouble the shingle weavers. At the 1912 convention, a referendum to resign AFL affiliation in favor of IWW affiliation was introduced, but unanimously defeated. In April 1913, the IUT Shingle Weavers locals of Ballard, Washington, presented a set of demands to the management of the local shingle mills. The shingle weavers demanded consonance with the union wage scale, improved working conditions, and union recognition. When their demands were ridiculed by the mill owners, 300 shingle weavers struck. Almost all the shingle mills in Ballard shut down. A few kept open, but only ran 1 or 2 machines. Membership continued to climb during the first month of the strike, and success seemed imminent. Confidence remained high for months, but by late summer, the striking workers had had enough. Imported strikebreakers and vicious attacks by employers, including an effort to frame the union for an attempted bombing, took their toll. Although the union voted on July 17th to call off the strike, they did not admit defeat, but maintained that their decision was a strategic response to circumstances beyond their control. By the way, the old Shingle Weavers banner is in the older section of the building, behind glass on a wall in a stairwell. And thanks to the Harry Bridges Center for Labor Studies at the University of Washington for much of this information from its website.
This has been Our View, the television voice for Washington's working families. Our View is brought to you by the members of the Washington Federation of State Employees. We remind you, when you accept a paycheck for your hard work, you don't give up your rights. Thank you for joining us.
I'm going to play a piece on the mouth organ.